there. We have got a busy story for you today, so I'm going to get right into it. Now, we are in the book of Acts, and we're still pretty early in the book where the church is exploding in growth. More people are hearing about Jesus. They're seeing the apostles who are now uh, preaching. Uh, we'd say great guns, meaning they're just really going all out and they're getting to the people. These are very different from the guys we remember right before Jesus was crucified, who were kind of reluctant to do a lot of things, and especially once he was crucified, when they were afraid. They are now very clear on their mission, and they are bold to the point where they are not concerned about things happening to them. And it shows in the number of people who are coming to them. And we find that this group, even though it's getting pretty large now, is very tight knit. And what they are doing is providing for each other's needs. So if someone is having problems making money for food to buy food, then people will come in with food or they'll bring in money. And it's to the point where people are selling property. And that was an especially big deal in those days. And even now, think about if someone were to sell his house and give his money to people who were in need, then you can understand that that was major. And in the middle of this, though, we had a couple, Ananias and Sapphira, and they sold some property, and they came to Peter and they laid it at his feet, which a lot of people were doing. The thing is, though, they had decided they had gotten a certain amount, and they said, well, we'll keep back some of this money for ourselves, but we'll take the rest of it. And they were going to pretend that they were giving everything they had made from selling the property. And they went separately, though. Ananias went first, and I don't know where Sapphira was at the time, but Ananias went in. He laid the money at Peter's feet, and Peter's going, Ananias, um, how has Satan deceived you so that you would hold back some of the money? Now, listen, when you had the property, it was yours to do with what you wanted. When you sold it, you could do anything you wanted to with the money. And yet, you're trying to deceive God by saying this is all of the money and you held some of it back. It's not a good idea. And Ananias drops dead, and people are shocked by this. And there's some of the young men there who take um, Ananias and carry his body out to be buried. And then about 3 hours later, uh, his wife comes in. She doesn't know what has happened. And Sapphira goes in, and Peter says, oh, this money from you and Ananias, is this the amount? And he tells her the amount. He says, is this the amount that you made from selling your property? And she says, yes, it is. And he's going, you haven't lied to me, but you've lied to the Spirit of God. And the men who just buried your husband are coming back in. And they were. Well, she drops dead. And I've got to think, this is not a very humorous thing, but I think about it as they've just gone and buried him, and now they come back in. She drops dead. Now they're going back out to take her to bury her as well. Well, people were scared over this because they realized, okay, this is a serious thing, and God knows what's going on. And when we're motivated to do something, we better be honest about what we're doing. And that was something that is important for all believers even now, is that understand why you're doing what you're doing. Well, the disciples continue with the preaching. They do have the miraculous gifts, so they're able to heal people, and people are coming from all around. And you think about when Jesus was doing this, and now it's multiplied because there are 12 guys taking care of this. Well, as you might expect, the Jewish leaders do not like this. The high priest gets wind of what's going on, and the Sadducees also hear this. They're on the side of the high priest. And part of it, you may remember, is that the Sadducees didn't believe anything happened after you died, that that was it. But there are these 12 guys out around the temple every day, and they're preaching about this guy named Jesus who came back from the dead. Well, they're offended by that, and they have the apostles arrested and put them in jail. And apparently, they have something in mind where they're going to call together the Sanhedrin and put them on trial the next day. But during the night, an angel comes along and gets them out of jail. Now, this is not the Roman jail again. This is the one that the Jewish people had and was run by temple guards and that sort of person. Well, in the morning, everything's locked up tight in the jail, and someone goes and looks and goes, "These 12 guys aren't in here." And they go back to the Sanhedrin's meeting, and they're trying to figure out what happened with them. And someone comes in and says, "Oh, those 12 guys you arrested yesterday, they're out at the temple and they're teaching just like always." Well, that's a big surprise to everyone, but that doesn't stop the leaders. It doesn't tell the high priest and the Sadducees that, hey, maybe you should leave these guys alone. No, they are determined to take care of them once and for all. And they send their soldiers out there. Now, the captain and the soldiers with him are smart people, and they go to the apostles and they don't try to use force to make them come along. It's more of a, okay, they want to see you in here, can you come with us? And the apostles do. Take the apostles in there, and the Sanhedrin is raking them over the coals and say, "We told you not to speak in this name." Now, they won't say the name Jesus, but everybody knows that's who they're talking about. "We told you not to teach in his name, and here you are, you're trying to blame us for his blood and say that we killed him." And Peter says, pretty much, "Well, that's because you did. You did kill him. And listen, we're going to obey God, not men." And the other apostles are right in there with him. "Yeah, that's right. We'll obey God, but not you." And that made these leaders furious. And I don't know exactly what they had in mind, but fortunately, there was a Pharisee who people respected and stood up. His name's Gamaliel. And he says, "Now listen." And everybody listened because they knew he was very smart. He was a Pharisee, and so he knew the scriptures. He also knew the Jewish history. And he started saying, "Now look, there some time back there was this one guy named Thutis, and everybody thought he was something, and he had a bunch of people following him, and then he died, and that was the end of that. His people dispersed. And then more recently, there was this guy named Judas. By the way, this is not the Judas who used to be an apostle. It's a different Judas." He said there's this Judas who came from Galilee, and he thought he was a big deal. He kind of led a revolt, and then he had a bunch of people with him, and then he died, and then that was the end of that. He wandered off. He said, "Look, if this is just from men, this thing that these 12 guys are doing is going to come to nothing. But if this is from God, you are going to find yourself fighting against God, and you are not going to win." Well, the Sanhedrin thought this over and decided this was a good idea. Now, while Gamaliel had been speaking, they had had the apostles outside, and so they brought them back in there, and they warned them again, "Don't be talking in this name." And then they had them flogged. Now, this is where you take these whips. And this was not a pleasant thing. This was a punishment across the back and the chest, and it would pretty much cut open the skin of the people who were being whipped or flogged, and then they sent them away. Well, you would think the apostles would think they lost because they went in there, they end up getting flogged and going out. No, no, they're rejoicing. They're going, okay, we must be doing something right for Jesus because we are getting punished kind of like he did. Now, not as much, not completely. They haven't been crucified, but they're seeing that, okay, we're following God. We knew bad things were going to happen to us if we were doing it right, and now these things are happening. So, as we see, the church is growing more and more. People are drawn to it. Some of the people who aren't following them are kind of afraid to listen to them, but they know that these men are from God. And even though there's resistance building up, they are not discouraged. In fact, in all of this, there's a fellow named Joseph who ends up becoming called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, because he becomes such a strong leader. Now, he doesn't become one of the apostles, but he uh, has a lot to offer. He does a lot of things that we will hear about in upcoming stories. But as for this, I will close with this lesson today and tell you that the tie I've got on has pictures of Greek coins, and I'm thinking some of these would have been used back in that time. And this is to help remind us that people were not considering their money their own, but using it to help one another. And that's one thing that we can keep in mind too, is that we're blessed by God with things, and we can use those things to bless other people. So with that, I will let you go, and I'll see you next time. Bye.